Right now, your brain actually cannot tell the difference between the absolute terror of walking into a high-stakes job interview and the thrilling anticipation of strapping into a roller coaster.
Yeah, the physical biology is practically identical. I mean, your heart is hammering against your ribs. You get that sudden spike in cortisol, the clammy hands.
Right, it's exactly the same. The only difference between those two states is the cognitive label that you slap onto the experience.
It is entirely a matter of interpretation. But, we treat confidence like it's this genetic lottery ticket.
Oh, for sure.
We assume some people are just born with the right emotional shock absorbers, and the rest of us are just doomed to sweat through our shirts in the waiting room.
And that is exactly the myth we are tearing down today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to decode a really practical source text we have. It's called Mastering the Mindset, the essential guide to building confidence. And our goal is to take confidence out of this realm of magic and redefine it as a highly trainable mechanical skill.
Right, something you can physically build step by step.
Exactly. And the source material grounds this immediately by placing you in that exact hallway outside the interview room. You are standing there, experiencing that highly specific cocktail of nervous energy and dread.
We've all been there. And next to you is another candidate feeling the exact same elevated heart rate, the exact same physiological threat response.
But the internal software they are running is completely different. The first person is just paralyzed. Yeah. The script looping in their head is entirely catastrophic, like, what if I give the wrong answer? What if I fail?
Yeah, it's an obsession with an impossible standard of perfection.
Totally. Contrast that with the second person. They are equally terrified, but their internal dialogue is focused entirely on the process. So they're thinking, I've prepared well, I will give my best, and whatever happens, I'm going to learn from this.
They aren't expecting a flawless performance. They're just expecting a learning opportunity.
So right out of the gate, the text forces us to redefine the word itself. Confidence is not the absence of fear.
No, not at all.
It's simply the belief in your ability to learn, to adapt, and handle whatever outcome reality throws at you. It is a relationship with the unknown.
But to build that relationship with the external world, you first have to rewire your internal operating system.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Because before we even talk about stepping into the interview, we have to examine the default way we talk to ourselves. The source points out this devastating reality. Many of us wake up every single day and immediately tell ourselves, I can't do this. I am not good enough.
Right. And let's pause and look at why we do that. Our listeners know a bit about psychology, so we shouldn't pretend this is just some random bad habit. There's an evolutionary reason we default to assuming we're going to fail, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's the negativity bias.
Yeah.
Our ancient ancestors didn't survive by walking out of the cave assuming everything was going to be sunshine and rainbows.
No, they survived by assuming every rustling bush was a tiger. Your brain is not optimized for your happiness or your professional success. It is optimized for your survival. And from a survival standpoint, overestimating a threat is so much safer than underestimating it.
Makes sense.
The problem is that your ancient amygdala cannot differentiate between the social threat of a bad presentation and the physical threat of a predator.
Wow.
So your brain literally screams danger by feeding you self-doubt just to keep you safely hidden in the cave.
Knowing that it's an evolutionary glitch is comforting, but it doesn't really solve the problem of living with it today. The text emphasizes replacing that negative loop with realistic, growth-focused thoughts, like, I am learning something new every day.
Right.
But I have to push back here. Is it really as simple as just flipping a switch and reciting a mantra?
Yeah.
If I'm terrified of public speaking, does staring into a bathroom mirror and chanting, I am a champion 50 times actually change my brain chemistry?
It doesn't, and that actually introduces the danger of toxic positivity, which is why the source is very careful to advocate for realistic self-talk.
Okay, realistic is the key word there.
Yes. Delusional positivity actually creates more anxiety because your brain knows you are lying to it. If you have never spoken on stage before, telling yourself, I am the greatest orator in the world, creates this massive cognitive dissonance.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound while pretending you aren't bleeding.
Exactly. But saying, I have practiced this material and I will give my best effort, that is a verifiable truth. You are focusing on the verb, the effort, rather than the outcome. And the mechanism behind why this realistic repetition works is neuroplasticity.
Okay, walk me through the actual mechanism there, because, rewiring the brain gets thrown around a lot in self-help circles, and it often sounds a bit nebulous. How does shifting from "I will fail" to "I will give my best effort" physically alter the brain's architecture?
Think of your brain's neural pathways like hiking through a really dense, overgrown forest. The very first time you try to think a new, positive thought like failure is just learning, it is agonizingly difficult.
Because there's no path yet.
Right, you have to hack your way through the underbrush. The electrical signals in your brain face massive resistance. Meanwhile, the pathway for "I am an imposter" is this paved, multi-lane superhighway because you've driven down it 10,000 times.
So the negative thought is literally the path of least biological resistance.
It is, but every time you consciously force the signal down the new, realistic pathway, a process called myelination occurs.
Myelination.
Yeah, your brain coats that new neural connection in a fatty layer called myelin, which acts basically like insulation on a copper wire. It makes the signal travel faster and more efficiently.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And at the same time, a process called synaptic pruning begins to literally dismantle the old negative highway because it just isn't being used as much. You are physically terraforming your brain.
That reframes the entire concept. You aren't just trying to feel better, you are engaging in a biological construction project. And I guess the most critical piece of infrastructure you have to build is how you process failure. The source makes a profound point here. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a vital component of the journey.
It requires recategorizing a mistake from a character flaw to just data.
Right.
If you blow an interview, the unpruned negative brain says, "I am fundamentally unworthy of employment." The confident, myelinated brain says, "Okay, my answer to the technical question lacked depth. What specific skill do I need to acquire before the next interview?"
It's purely an information gathering exercise. Think about it like touching a hot stove. You touch the burner, you get burned, and now you have acquired the data that the stove is hot.
Exactly.
You don't collapse onto the kitchen floor crying about how you are a fundamentally terrible person who doesn't deserve to be in a kitchen.
Yeah.
You just use an oven mitt next time.
Yeah. That's a brilliant way to look at it. But even with the best internal dialogue and the most rational view of failure, reality will eventually hit you. You can't just sit in your living room thinking realistic thoughts forever.
Right.
You have to translate that internal architecture into the external world.
The translation layer. Because mental gymnastics aren't enough when the pressure is actually on. The text gives us the formula for this transition: relentless preparation and structured exposure to the unknown. The specific phrase from the source that stuck with me is that preparation turns nervous energy into confidence.
Going back to our opening thought about fear and excitement being physiologically identical, preparation is the catalyst that allows you to shift the cognitive label from panic to productive energy. Anxiety fundamentally thrives in the dark. It feeds on the unknown variables. Preparation is the act of systematically shrinking the size of the unknown.
The guide gives incredibly practical examples of this, like a student rigorously studying for an exam, or a professional ensuring they deeply understand the data before a meeting. They outline this great pre-event checklist. Gather the necessary information, practice multiple times, anticipate possible questions, and visualize yourself successfully navigating the friction.
Because when you anticipate the difficult questions, you are essentially pre-computing your threat response.
Okay, pre-computing, I like that.
If the interviewer asks the hardest possible question, your amygdala doesn't need to hijack your brain with a panic response because your prefrontal cortex already has a file labeled, "Here is how we handle this."
Preparation is the foundation, absolutely. But preparation can easily become a trap, right? Like a highly productive form of procrastination where you just read books about swimming but never actually jump into the pool.
Oh, happens all the time.
Eventually, you have to hit send or walk onto the stage. And this brings us to what I think is the most dangerous misconception out there: the deeply held belief that you have to feel confident before you take action.
It is the ultimate catch-22 of human psychology. We sit around waiting for the magical feeling of confidence to arrive so that we can finally, ask for a raise or start a business or speak up in a meeting.
Yeah.
But the feeling of confidence is entirely generated by the act itself. The text states it plainly: action creates confidence, not the other way around.
The source illustrates this with a really relatable example of someone trying to overcome the fear of speaking English.
Right.
If they sit at home waiting until they feel perfectly fluent to speak, the fear just solidifies into concrete.
Right.
But if they force themselves to speak one sentence today, maybe a short, awkward conversation tomorrow, and a longer discussion next week, They build capacity.
Psychologists call this systematic desensitization. You're exposing yourself to microdoses of the thing that terrifies you.
This perfectly destroys that cultural obsession with fake it till you make it. I've always despised that advice. The source doesn't tell you to put on a suit, walk into a room, and pretend you're the CEO. It tells you to prepare relentlessly and start small. It's exactly like weightlifting. If you want to get strong, you don't walk into a gym on day one, load 300 pounds onto a barbell, and try to deadlift it by pretending you're a bodybuilder. You will literally break your spine.
You start with the empty bar, just the 45-pound bar.
You lift the bar, and it feels heavy, but you survive. Next week, you add 5 pounds, then 10. You don't fake the strength. You systematically build the capacity through micro-exposures to stress.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, looking at the biology of learning, every single first attempt at something new, like that first public speech where your voice shakes uncontrollably, is inherently terrifying because the brain perceives a genuine threat to your social status.
Because in evolutionary terms, getting rejected by the tribe meant death.
Exactly. But the mere act of getting to the end of that shaky presentation and realizing that nobody threw rocks at you and you didn't die is profound, undeniable proof to your nervous system. It recalibrates your baseline threat response, ensuring that the second attempt is marginally less terrifying.
Surviving the discomfort is the literal currency that buys you confidence. Okay, so we are pruning our negative neural pathways. We are shrinking the unknown through relentless preparation, and we are lifting the empty bar by forcing ourselves to take small actions. Now, we have to look at how we physically present ourselves in the world while we are doing all this, because the guide places a massive emphasis on external signals, specifically body language.
The transition from internal mechanics to physical presence is so crucial. Your body communicates your internal state to the room before your vocal cords even have a chance to vibrate.
The source provides a fantastic side-by-side comparison here. Person 1 approaches someone, looks down at the floor, shrinks their shoulders, speaks softly, and says, "Hi, I'm Rahul." Person 2 approaches, stands up straight, opens their chest, smiles naturally, makes direct eye contact, and says the exact same words. "Hello, I'm Rahul. Nice to meet you." The text notes the impression is entirely different.
Well, the physical markers of assertion are universal across human cultures. Good posture, steady eye contact, and a clear, modulated speaking pace. They signal to the social hierarchy that you belong in the room.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop you right there and demand the receipts on this one. Does standing up straight actually change our internal psychological confidence? Or is this just a theatrical trick? Like, am I just wearing a costume of confidence to fool the interviewer while inside I'm still a nervous wreck?
It is absolutely not just theater. It is a hardwired biological mechanism known as embodied cognition.
Embodied cognition.
Right. We tend to think that the brain is the sole commander of the body, that you feel confident and therefore you stand up straight. But the communication is actually bidirectional. Your brain is constantly polling your body to figure out what emotional state it should be in.
How does that communication actually happen, though? What is the physical mechanism?
It relies heavily on the vagus nerve, which runs from your brainstem down through your chest and abdomen.
Okay.
When you hunch over, cross your arms, and look at the floor, you are physically compressing your chest cavity. You are taking shallow breaths. The vagus nerve senses this contracted, defensive posture and sends an immediate signal to the brain saying, "We are under attack, prepare for submission or flight." The brain responds by spiking your cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Exactly. But when you do the opposite, when you pull your shoulders back and open your chest,
They're opening up.
you are expanding your lung capacity, you take deeper breaths. The vagus nerve senses the open, vulnerable physical posture and signals the brain, "We are safe, there is no predator here." This physical expansion has been shown to lower cortisol and naturally regulate your heart rate. You are physically manipulating your own nervous system into a state of calm assertion.
Wow. So the theatrical trick actually triggers the biology. Your posture forces your brain to lower the stress hormones, which makes you feel more assertive. That naturally changes how other people perceive you, so they treat you with more respect. And the respectful reaction becomes external data that validates and reinforces your internal confidence. It is a massive self-sustaining feedback loop.
A feedback loop that is heavily dependent on the environment you place yourself in.
Right.
Because if you optimize your posture and your mindset, but you remain surrounded by people who constantly belittle you, that feedback loop shatters. The text is highly specific about curating your environment. You have to surround yourself with people who provide constructive, actionable feedback and who actively celebrate your growth.
But there is a massive modern roadblock to this. We can curate our physical friends, sure, but we spend half our lives in a digital environment.
Oh, yeah.
The source addresses this by warning against the comparison trap. It is incredibly easy to build up your confidence with small wins and then immediately destroy it because you open Instagram and see someone launching a massive company or delivering a flawless TED Talk, and you ask yourself, why am I not like them?
The danger of the comparison trap is that it completely ignores the hidden variables. When you compare yourself to a highly successful peer or some influencer, you are seeing a highly curated highlight reel.
Just the best parts.
Right. You aren't seeing their decade of failed attempts, their financial safety nets, or their specific luck.
The source provides a brilliant mindset shift for this. It reminds you that you're comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. You're comparing your chapter 1 to their chapter 20.
It is an unwinnable psychological game. The only rational metric for comparison is a temporal one. How can I become a better version of myself than I was yesterday? It moves the benchmark from a volatile external standard that you cannot control to a stable internal standard that you actually can.
It's just you versus past you. So we've covered the internal wiring, the physical preparation, the bodily mechanics, and the environmental factors. But there's a trap here too. You don't just reach level 100 confidence, get a certificate, and coast for the rest of your life.
Definitely not.
Confidence is perishable. How do we keep the momentum going on a random Tuesday 6 months from now?
You have to treat confidence as a daily maintenance routine, much like physical fitness. The source highlights 2 primary engines for sustaining this momentum, continuous skill acquisition, and the deliberate celebration of micro-progress.
Let's look at the skill acquisition piece. The guide emphasizes the constant pursuit of new abilities, improving communication, learning a language, picking up a new software program, or even just reading deeply. But why does learning how to code, for example, make me more confident in a completely unrelated social situation?
Because the specific skill isn't the point. The meta skill is the point. Every time you struggle through learning a new language or mastering a complex piece of software, you are gathering undeniable empirical evidence of your own adaptability. You are proving to your brain that you can survive being a beginner.
It builds a generalized baseline of trust in yourself. So when you face a completely alien, terrifying situation, your brain doesn't panic. It looks at the resume of resilience you've built and says, well, we didn't know how to speak Spanish 3 years ago and we figured that out. We didn't know how to use that complex editing software. We figured that out. We could probably figure this out too.
Exactly. You become confident, not because you know the answer, but because you trust your ability to find the answer, which feeds directly into the second engine for momentum recognizing and celebrating small wins.
So what does this all mean? This is where I think almost all of us fail completely. The text points out that we constantly delay feeling proud of ourselves until we achieve massive, earth-shattering milestones. But the examples the text gives for what we should be celebrating are deliberately tiny speaking up for 5 minutes, finishing a frustrating task, or asking a single question that terrified you.
We struggle with this because society has deeply conditioned us to only validate the finish line. We throw massive parties for the college graduation, the marriage, the huge promotion. We are neurologically trained to withhold our self-worth until we hit the jackpot of a massive dopamine release.
We starve ourselves of encouragement for 99% of the journey. Instead of the cliche pennies in a jar metaphor, think of it like building a coral reef.
Oh, I like that.
A single coral polyp is microscopic. It's fragile. It seems completely insignificant on its own. But day by day, year by year, millions of them calcify and build upon each other until they form a barrier reef that can literally withstand a hurricane.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. Every time you choose to speak up in a meeting, despite your trembling voice, every time you send the email you were avoiding, you are laying down another polyp of calcified proof.
Yeah.
Over time, that structure becomes unbreakable, but you have to actively acknowledge the structure you are building.
Which raises an incredibly uncomfortable question for all of us. Why are we so willing to criticize our tiny mistakes, but so reluctant to celebrate our tiny acts of bravery? Are you waiting for a flawless performance review to finally allow yourself to feel good? Or are you willing to validate the clumsy, terrifying, brave step you took today?
The text actually synthesizes this entire philosophy into a single, actionable formula. It's practically an equation for engineering self-assurance. Practice plus preparation plus a positive mindset plus consistent action equals confidence.
Look closely at the variables in that equation. Not a single one of them requires you to be born a genius. Not a single one requires you to have a trust fund or perfect genetics or extraordinary luck. They're all fundamentally choices.
Choices you have the autonomy to make right now, regardless of your starting line.
So, to bring this entire deep dive full circle, we started with the realization that confidence is absolutely not a magical gift. It is an architectural structure that you build. You start by hacking through the dense forest of your own negativity bias, paving a new neural pathway focused on realistic effort.
Right.
You prepare relentlessly to force your biology to label your racing heart as excitement rather than panic. You take terrifyingly small actions to prove to your amygdala that the threat isn't lethal. You use your vagus nerve to hack your posture, you surround yourself with the right people, and you stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. And above all, you celebrate every microscopic piece of the reef you build.
And you must accept that failure is not an indictment of your character. It is simply the data you need to adjust your approach for tomorrow.
So we want to issue a direct challenge to you, the listener, based on what we've unpacked from this guide today. Take that formula and apply it to one micro action today. Speak the single sentence you've been endlessly translating in your head. Ask the question you were afraid would make you look uninformed. Take the small opportunity. Stop sitting around waiting for the magical feeling of confidence to descend upon you, because it isn't coming. You have to go out into the friction and build it yourself.
And I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to chew on. If the core premise of this entire guide is biologically and psychologically correct, that action creates confidence and never the other way around. What is the one specific thing in your life that you have been putting off because you keep telling yourself you aren't confident enough yet? What if doing it while your hands are visibly shaking, doing it while you are still completely terrified, is the only possible way you will ever become brave?